Video where I show you some things about charts, and I wanted to record it so that you could review it as often as you needed to. I want to start by creating a pie chart for approved the Equal Rights Amendment. What I did was I copied the data for that variable plus the state names to a new sheet that I called pie chart, ERA. And then to create the pie chart, the first thing I need to do is I need to have a frequency table. So I do a frequency table by highlighting the data that I am interested in and going to Data and Pivot Table. I'm going to do the work in this sheet, so I'm going to tell it to put it in F1. And the rows are going to be whether or not the Equal Rights Amendment was approved, and the values are going to be the state or territory. So we're getting a count of the states that did each. As you'll see, we have 37 states approved, 13 didn't, 1 was not applicable. That's the District of Columbia, which doesn't actually get a vote on this. So if you want to do the pie chart out of this, then you highlight your data. Do not highlight grand total. Don't put grand totals in your charts. It'll throw everything off. You just highlight the data in your pivot table, and you insert a chart, and I think it's going to suggest a pie chart. Now you'll find when you do this that the yes and the no and the not applicable will make good sense, but this piece right here, the count A of state/territory, not as helpful. It will help if you fix the heading on your column or you fix that title. So you're going to edit your chart and then try where it says value, you want customize, and you want to go to chart axis and titles, and your title text should actually be states ERA ratification status or something like that. Just name it something so that when your reader looks at the chart, they know what it's a chart of. So there you go. Now you have a pie chart from this data. I want to show you a different kind of pie chart, a different reason to do a pie chart. This was something interesting that somebody did that I found really illuminating. So we'll take the state data, and then we're also going to let's take the population of the United States, the population data, and we're going to Control-C, and we're going to create a new sheet for that. We're going to put that data here, and we're going to call this chart US population. Now, what you could do first is you could look at your frequency chart. What you're going to find, not surprisingly, is that every state has a different population. So when you do a frequency table for the population, you are going to get 51 different values, because the frequency chart, there's no two states with exactly the same population. So this isn't going to be really helpful, but I'm going to show you this nonetheless. That's what I want. I don't want that. I want to add the population. You can see each population is its own line. So we're not actually going to do a pivot table here. We're going to try something different. So I'm going to delete all of this. Don't have to look at it anymore. If you take this data and you sort it by size, whenever you're working with the individual states, you can make them alphabetical or you can sort them by size. Those are two ways to kind of create meaning for your viewer. In a chart, sorting by size is a nice way to create meaning. So we're going to sort the sheet, but we're going to sort the sheet by column B. And we're going to sort it from smallest to largest. Now we have the states sorted in order of their size, and I managed to put that down there. I'm going to stick this up here, and I'm going to insert a row. I'm going to put this data back in here, And I'm going to freeze this line. This is something that is super helpful for making sure your headings don't move around. Now, having done view, freeze, one row, that top row will never get sorted. Now that it's all in order, one thing you could do is create a bar chart. So we're going to insert a chart, and you can see, you'll want to make the chart bigger so you can see all the states, but you can see all of the states and you can see how they steadily get bigger. And you can see which are the largest states, which are the smallest states, and which ones are in the middle. So that is one way to look at this. It's a very fine way to look at this. Again, I would go in here and I would edit my chart and I would customize it to fix the chart title so that the chart title says something meaningful. And it might say population of the states and DC. Now you have a meaningful chart. The units make sense, the states make sense. Another thing you could do with this chart, however, and this is what a student did that I thought was really interesting, is they made a pie chart out of it. If you think about it, the United States population sums up to a total. And if you make a pie chart, you're able to see the largest states as a proportion of the total US population. I thought this was a really cool way to lay this out, and I wanted to show it to you. Of Hispanic citizens or residents. We're going to copy that and we're going to put it in our histogram file. This is another really interesting thing that I saw people do. You can create a pivot table out of this data. And so we can see what the frequencies are for each of the proportions that are listed. So we'll do a pivot table and we will put it in the existing sheet at F1. We'll create that. And our rows are going to be the percent Hispanic, and our values are going to be the percent Hispanic. We don't want the sum, we want the count, because we want to know how many states are at each percent Hispanic. And you can see we have a frequency table. If you do if we do a chart out of this frequency table, we can insert a chart that will show us the different percentages. I would not use a line chart here. I would be more likely to use like a Hispanic. With this, a bar chart. What this shows you is that only one state is 1% Hispanic. 2 states are 2% Hispanic. 6 states are 4% Hispanic. 1 state is 49% Hispanic. So this shows you how the states are distributed in terms of percent Hispanic. And that is an interesting thing. But we probably want our title to reflect that. So distribution of states in terms of percent Hispanic. And what we see is, in fact, there are a few states that are coming close to 50% Hispanic, but the majority of states are actually here below 10% Hispanic. So it's a kind of an interesting way to look at this data. You can see this data similarly. It's going to be similar but different. If we, instead of do the bar chart of the frequency table, look and see what happens if we do a bar chart of the data itself. So now I've gone back to our original data and I'm going to insert a chart. And we're not going to use a pie chart ever if you're dealing with percentages, because percentages don't add up to a predictable whole. So the pie chart we will not use when we use percentages. But I'm going to pull up the histogram idea and see what that looks like. That is typically under Other. And here we go. So this is a histogram that has the number of states and then these percentages. What you can see that the histogram does for you is it actually, I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to zoom out again so we can see this. What you can see is that the histogram takes this data in the distribution of states and collapses it into this. So from 0 to 7% Hispanic is this number of states up here, and that is represented by these 22 states in the histogram. And so on down for these different parts, these different breakdowns. So these tables are showing you the same thing, just in slightly different ways. The last thing I could suggest for how you might look at this data is to sort this data by size. Again, we want to sort by column B, and we're going to sort the whole sheet by column B. And then we're going to do a chart, a bar chart from the state data that's going to show us the name of every state. For that, you insert your chart and you choose the bar chart. So now you have the bar chart. And your bar chart shows you where each state falls. These are all ways to represent the same data. The way that you choose to represent it is going to come down to what you want to communicate. Up here, we get to see each value and how often it is represented in our state level data. Here, this in some ways may be more useful. We can really clearly see this not normal distribution, that most states have very few Hispanic, very low proportions of Hispanic residents. And here we can actually see, I'm going to go in here, states by proportion of Hispanic residents. Here you can actually see all of the state data. And again, which one of these approaches you choose is going to come down to what you want to communicate in your chart. I just wanted to be able to show you each of those options and have you play with them and think about them.